it up to like much more of like just chatting, you know,
Yeah, man.
which is really cool. All right, guys, we live and direct right now. Actually, myself and Jake were just talking about how we switched up a little bit of the way that we're doing this to have much more of a conversation style. I think this could be born, like maybe this could be the beginning of a podcast or something. Oh, by the way, I didn't
Yeah.
ask you, um, do I sound better, clearer? I'm trying this other
Yeah,
mic out.
you do, man.
Did you
Definitely
know? Do you notice a
like a
difference?
mic. Yeah, yeah, it does sound better.
It's
Yeah.
like what?
Like a podcast mic. It sounds like a podcast now. I need to get one.
Yeah, no. Yeah, yeah. This is cool. This mic, I think this mic was only like $100 or $200 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah bought it, and it's a USB mic that just plugs right into the computer. And I actually have it. I use it for most of my YouTube videos. And I was using
Yeah.
this other mic, a snowball blue.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
It's
know that
called
one. Yeah.
Snowball Ice. Yeah. And so I've been using that one for years. I started the channel with that one. I feel like I've
Yeah.
like moved up. And then actually we're looking to a longer term goal is to invest into like a really great podcast studio
Mm-hmm.
and set up this entire room like a podcast studio as we continue to grow, and then just like
Whoa.
take it up to a whole nother level. But I'm
Yeah, man.
excited for that. All
Me
right,
too.
so much for tuning in to Semen Retention Nation Live, episode
Yeah.
number 10. And today we're talking about how to develop as a masculine leader. Jake, the
Yeah.
number one Hare Krishna rapper in the world. Now, this channel, most people know Hare Krishna, but not every. I don't like common knowledge. It's not something that just been like, hey, what's up? My name is Nakula. I'm a Hare Krishna, right? It's not like that type of thing. Um, what is it? What is it in your definition? What does it mean to be a Hare Krishna rapper?
Oh, I didn't expect that question, but well,
You're like, I'm
I
gonna
agree.
ask you a bunch of questions. I start off, I'm like, I'm a coach, right? So I'm just so used to asking questions. I'm like, I'll start by asking you a question and put you on the spot.
Well, a rapper, as we all mostly probably know, is someone who's into rap music and raps. So I was doing that, and then I started searching spiritually, and I came across the Hare Krishna movement, which to me I find fascinating. The philosophy is so deep, and you can have real tangible experience of that philosophy and a spiritual experience and connection with God with the process they give. So I'm all about just finding the truth, man, and those guys provide it. So I'm very much into it. Yeah, and a Hare Krishna person is someone who's devoted to Krishna. Krishna is a name for God. He has many names, but Krishna means the all attractive. So it's a very personal way to describe God. And I also love to be more personal, looking for the truth and in a personal way. So, and then you combine Hare Krishna with rap, which are the two things I like, and you get the number one Hare Krishna rapper in the world. And also you get a
Nice.
masculine leader, which I'm which I'm learning to implement from you, and that's actually giving me a lot more. They would call it Shakti, which means like powerful, potent energy to do this mission I'm on of spreading spiritual message through music, through semen retention and just my spiritual practice and learning to be a more masculine leader, which unfortunately in this day and age I think is something most men need to be taught. And so today we're going to talk about the connection between the things you teach. So, this is the Semen Retention Nation. So we often talk about NoFap and semen retention, but you also have a program called the Powerhouse Man program, which I'm also involved in, which is about training men to be leaders, masculine leaders. And then you're also a coach one-on-one, and all those things go together, right? I've experienced it myself. So yeah, maybe you can explain the importance of all those things and how they connect and how semen retention is linked to leadership and masculinity.
Yeah. So first of all, that's really cool. Like, I think what you're doing, combining the Hare Krishna
Mm,
philosophy with your love of hip hop, and I think know that's where one connection we have too is hip hop,
Yeah.
right? Like, because I would be like your ideal
Mm.
audience, like a guy who grew up listening to 50 Cent and Pac, and then I'm like, yeah, but I'm kind of like trying to be more positive in my life. I want to be more
Yeah.
spiritual in my life. So listening to Hit 'Em Up, is not necessarily the most spiritual conscious a way to do it. But then there's like a guy like you that comes along, is like, actually, I do hip hop. I love hip hop, and I'm also spiritually inclined and searching for the truth and
Mm.
searching for deeper aspects and meaning to life. And so it's I
Yeah.
think what you're doing is really cool. It's a great service. And then as far as semen retention, how it develops us as men. So semen retention develops you as a man, meaning when you practice any type of sexual control or sexual regulation, you ultimately are developing in responsibility, in maturity. Your life is no longer like maybe, when we're teenagers or in our early 20s, my life was essentially defined by like chasing ass. Right. And at the core of it, like even underneath, like chasing like you said, but you did a lot of other things. I played sports, or I also was involved in the music industry for a while, and I done a lot of other things. But at the center of that activity, after like realizing this, is like the center of that activity. Why do you
Mm.
want to be famous? Why do I want to have money?
Yeah.
Why do I want to, rap? It's actually because underneath it, I want to get laid. Right,
Yeah.
and it just comes down to that. It's actually the central activity for almost all activity in this world. And
Hmm.
this is actually, I was on a walk yesterday with my buddy. Now, my buddy is like, okay, so he's 63, non-spiritual, like
Mm.
got a bunch of letters behind his name, very intelligent guy. And
Mm.
he's like very, very scientific based, right? Like
Yeah.
it's his wife is a biologist. He is a scientist, and again, very, very educated person into the academic world. And so we were
Hmm.
on a walk yesterday, and we always have these conversations about science and religion and philosophy and politics, and we have very different opinions on things, right? Like
Mm.
he is vaccinated, he is all for that. Obviously, I say obviously, if you've been following for some time, you know that I was very open about um, mandatory vaccinations and all these things not being of, at least here in Canada, not being part of our constitution or of our charter of rights and freedoms, and blah 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 blah. And so we are very, very, very different opinions, and but yet we have like high levels of respect for each other, and we have great
Mm.
conversations. The point is, I was telling him about all these discoveries because I haven't seen him in a few years. And I was telling him all
Yeah.
these things, about sexual alchemy, sex transmutation.
Mm.
And he's a psychologist, right? And he's like, that's all psychology knows what you're speaking of, is that like
Mm.
that underneath all of our activities, the main
Sexual
focus of
drive.
activity is sex, is sexually driven.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
people
once
always go on about when you mention Freud, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, the guy who talks about sex. Everything comes from sex." That's what Freud said. But these very intelligent people,
right.
yeah, experts in their field, they know this also.
Yeah, they know this. He said, yeah, he said the psychologists understand this. They know this. And again, there was no spiritual talk about that, but spiritual talk, because I was doing spirituality actually. If this world, if this life is the center point is sex, then spiritual life, or the evolution of a man spiritually, means he has to make his life not about sex. He has to have a
Mm.
different central point of focus. And that has to first, so the first step to that is bringing that to the conscious awareness. And that's what we're doing here. This channel,
Mm.
the Nakula Does training grounds, all of the programs that I've created, designed, and teach right now are all based around you, a man, becoming highly aware of how your sexual energy is actually the center point and motivation of all your activity.
But
And when change that,
Mhm.
how that actually shifts your consciousness and the lens in which you see the world and who you are as a man. So when we talk about semen retention, what we're talking about is becoming aware, controlling the very basic motivation that we have as physical beings, as men on this planet. And
Mhm.
then developing into a leader means taking the central point of activity, which is sex, and shifting it to being the central point of service. That my
Mhm.
life as a man is actually where I'm going to be most fulfilled, the most useful, and actualize both my material and spiritual potentials is by shifting the center point from being sex to being service. And that's what a
Mhm.
leader is. See, a leader is a servant. Most people
Mm.
think of leaders as someone who gets the credit or the fame or the recognition or all of that things. And that is generally true. Leaders of all different walks of life, you're an artist, that's a form of leadership. That's artists are actually very influential, more generally than a coach and trainer will be. Like, I feel that the guys that I coach and train will be much more influential, famous, known than I ever will be, just because of the nature of that. Like an artist like yourself, you have the potential to be extremely influential. Take someone like a George Harrison, who,
Mm.
at the time, the Beatles being the biggest, musicians
Mhm.
or well-known musicians on the planet, and how many people he influenced to have a more spiritual outlook on life. My
Well,
own guru, the walking monk, was inspired by this in George Harrison, and now he's a monk, completely
mm.
living a life 100% dedicated to service.
I put it to you that George Harrison will, in the future, will be more famous than every other member of the Beatles. The Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, Ringo Starr, they'll be famous maybe probably a few hundred years, but George will be famous for thousands of years with spiritual people because his songs had a spiritual message, so it penetrates and it expands, and anything material contracts. And don't get me wrong, even the other Beatles had some spiritual songs, they might last a long time, but George's were of a deeper message for anyone who is connected in that way and can pick up what he's talking about. It will last yeah, for a longer time. He'll be famous for thousands of years or throughout eternity, even for the souls he has influenced spiritually. That's like eternal service.
Yeah, and that's why he'll be famous eternally, because his service was spiritual, right? Like it
Exactly.
has an expansive energy. Today, it still connects and affects with people. And while
So
most people do know John Lennon, they don't
yeah,
have that same deep connection that lasts, right?
yeah. So I'm interested then, if you could explain a bit more about how, yeah, it turns into that. So how sex turns into something more spiritual. So maybe people say that sex is like the strongest material desire, and as you said, when most of us when we're younger, we're just looking for that, and it's quite lusty. And some of the goal of life is just to rub your body on someone else's body. When you break it
Totally.
down, like it's like, but it's not the most highest goal. So what happens when you convert that from it just being that strong materialistic sense pleasure desire into something spiritual? And I've even heard you explain how you even become more refined, you yourself, you become more spirit than matter, the way that the energy refines in becoming gas. I was actually trying to explain this to someone the other day who was talking about chakras and things like that, how the
Mhm.
energy actually refine, and scientifically you actually become more spirit than matter by
Yes,
that
the
change.
semen. Yeah, according to Ayurveda, and this can be experienced by any man who practices. um what happens is semen is refined in the body, so whatever you ate 30 days ago is being created into semen in your body. And when you eat something, it goes through a refining process. They're called dutas. or in Ayurveda. And the dudas means refining processes. So, it goes from like food into like, I think into like guile, and guile into like muscle, and muscle into blood, and blood into bone, and bone into marrow, something like this. And basically what you did, and then the last refining process is into semen on the physical level. And so semen is being essentially dropped out. So it takes about 40 to 60 ounces of blood to create one drop of semen. So you can imagine how potent semen is. Semen is all your best proteins, enzymes, and nutrients. And that's because, go back to the central point of the body. The central focus point of the body is to have sex to reproduce the species. So essentially your DNA wants to reproduce itself to continue to, it is the way the desire for eternal life in the material world is expressed through the reproduction of children. Okay. So that is the material
misplaced. It's
yeah,
like,
that's the
sorry,
material
the
way.
interesting eternal desire to
Yeah.
be eternal through something temporary. It's like such a misunderstanding.
Right. And so the DNA is like trying to go through like, okay, I'm gonna be eternal by producing children. And so that is like essentially it. And you could see like in, let's say, mosquitoes, I think as soon as a mosquito finishes having sex, that life force is done. Like he
That's
literally gives
the
the
aim
life
of
force to
life.
the
Yeah.
woman and he dies. Yeah, so he has
Yeah.
sex, and then he dies. And so, in human life, thank goodness, we just don't have like sex and then it's over. But in a
Unless it's
way,
really
we do
good.
diminish our life force and energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Then you're like, oh yeah, I'm good.
Then
So
you come and go at the
in
same
our
time.
yeah, in our yeah, that's right. In our experience, like we kind of get rejuvenated once again. But as we get older as men, we should recognize that rejuvenation process is like very taxing, right? So like it's like a tax you're paying when to ejaculate. Because ejaculation is essentially taking your life force and depleting it for the potential of giving your life force to a new child. So when you practice FAP and when you practice semen retention, you're not giving away your life force. So it really goes to the fact that if you're going to ejaculate, generally from the most practical standpoint, from the most like functional, just straight functionation is the proper for having children, then there really is no need to ejaculate. And that's a huge like concept or paradigm shift for the way the culture is today, where it's like you should be ejaculating 21 times per month to avoid cancer, or that actually ejaculating releases social anxiety. And so there's this whole message or this whole message about getting men to ejaculate right now that's like hitting in the mainstream, which is the opposite message of actual wisdom and knowledge from ancient traditions, which is like actually a man should reduce ejaculation, control ejaculation to keep himself healthy, vital, and develop in as a man. So it's quite interesting, like a conflicting narrative right now, and that's because there are ultimately people that are benefiting off of men being weak, whether that's political benefit or big pharma is benefiting tons right now because they're prescribing tons and tons of like testosterone boosters. Right now, testosterone boosters are being recommended and prescribed by doctors than ever before. So there's a lot of money being made, and there's a lot of power being gained by keeping men weak and feeding this narrative of porn culture and masturbation culture.
Yeah. And also the society is heavily driven towards sense pleasure now, cheap sense pleasures now. So it's like, no concept of sacrifice, or as you say, the tax that you pay for these quick pleasures. It's just like, have your few seconds enjoyment, not informing people on the other side of it, the tax that you pay, rather than if you learn to be more controlled on the other side of that is something more valuable that you give away with your few seconds of pleasure. So
100%.
many benefits.
Like Yeah, there's so many benefits, and so as your body, so point is that your body goes through a tremendous amounts of energy, and it takes a lot to produce semen. And semen, while it's always being produced as we get older, naturally all of our systems, slow down a bit, right? It's a bit
Mm-hmm.
more taxing for us. Ejaculation, bigger tax. At, so it's important that we learn how to ejaculate, especially if we're still going to have sex. Like myself, I still have sex. So I've learned to have non-ejaculatory sex. So I can go months and I can have sex 3, 4, 5 times a week, like, type of thing. Like, not just like, oh, you have sex once in a while, but I can have a lot of sex and still keep my semen. And you can learn to do this through, our training, right? The training we offer, Sexual Alchemy and Powerhouse Man training programs. You can learn to do this by becoming a student at the Nakula Does training grounds. And this is the central focus of our training grounds and our training programs, is teaching men how to regulate and control ejaculation. Because now here's what happens. Now this starts to go more on a metaphysical or spiritual level. But so what happens is, after you retain for a certain amount of time, first of all, you'll have a natural enhanced testosterone boost, because about 7 to 10 days, depending on your health and your age and, different factors, lifestyle, your body, once not ejaculating, is going to produce testosterone to help you grow in masculinity. Because
Mm.
nature, physical nature, wants you to get laid to promote your DNA, from
Mm.
opportunity for your D to continuing. Get you laid, you have to be attractive. You have to have like a
Mm.
woman, right? And so therefore, nature's design is that if you retain, it kind of takes on this form where it's like this idea that's like, hey, you're retaining, so I'm gonna pump more testosterone in your system, because more
Mm.
testosterone is gonna make you more masculine, and the more masculine quality you have, God experience,
Mm.
brighter skin, deeper voice,
Yeah,
thicker hair, regrowth of
it's like
hair, muscle
you
growth,
trick your
fat
body
loss.
in a positive way. You trick your body in a positive way like that.
Yeah.
Whereas the other way around, when you're just like masturbating, ejaculating, you're tricking your body in a negative way to think you've achieved something and get this dopamine hit. But in this way, it's just more, with more knowledge, you're using your body's natural biological functions to benefit you rather than deplete you.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And negative means, I'm not looking at this moralistically. I'm looking at this like I'm not looking through a moral lens about your sexuality, right? That's where a lot of people
Hmm.
get turned off about any regulation, because they're like, you think the sex isn't natural? No, I think it's a very natural thing. I think if nobody had sex, nobody would, like, we none of us would be here, right? Like sex is a function of life. It's an important function of life, and I think that it should be understood as such. Like, if you're good at money, you have to understand money at a deeper level. You can't just understand
Mm.
money the way most people do. Most people suck at money, and that's why, because they have no understanding. They don't have a deeper level of understanding what it is. How do you look at it philosophically? What are my belief systems? Like, only people who dive deep into their money belief systems recognize how to shift their money life. Similarly, only people who dive deep into their own psyche and their own consciousness and explore their own consciousness get to recreate themselves in this life. They get to
Mm.
reincarnate, not after death, now, right now, today. Like, you
Mm.
can choose to be a different way by learning how to use your sexual energy. So as you develop as a man, more testosterone is put into your system. Your mind and body are one. So not only do you physically get the benefits of retaining, but psychologically you start to develop as a man. And this is more subtle, but it's to me, it's the real power of retention and the real power of
Mm.
sexual control. Because physically, you can argue, but if you ejaculate, you can replenish. For instance, zinc, a lot of zinc is lost in ejaculation. So if I ejaculate, I take zinc supplements after the next
Mm,
couple of days just to help my body out. So by
mm,
working out, having a good diet, understanding a bit of the of your own biology, you could do a lot of things on a physical level to, let's say, help your body reproduce semen and be a very high testosterone man, even with ejaculation. But the
mm,
psychological benefits are subtle, and just by taking zinc supplements, you don't get it. Okay, so
mm, mm,
here's the higher, to me, aspect of retention and no fap that should be understood. First of all, you will develop in the invisible muscle, but probably the most important muscle you'll ever develop is willpower. Is your
mm.
will
Yeah.
and willpower. Without will, there's nothing. Nothing is accomplished. Anybody knows without willpower, you don't do the hard work. To get to
Mhm.
get big money, to get an awesome relationship, you have to be uncomfortable, and you have to generally do that for a long period of time or sustained period of time. And so because of that, you need strong willpower. If you lack in willpower, every difficulty you face, the difficulty will essentially be bigger than you, and
Mhm.
you won't know how to go your power to develop the disciplines or the habits to see your life beyond those challenges or limitations. So one of the biggest benefits that we get is a development of willpower, because simply for us not to act on our instinctual biological urges gives us tremendous amounts of inner or spiritual power.
Mhm.
Shakti. You
Yeah.
used the word before, Shakti. To get
Mhm.
Shakti, you have to have willpower. Willpower is Shakti. Like, I have so much will that I could literally take it and make something happen in the world. And
Well,
as
imagine.
men, we
Yeah. Sorry,
go
it
ahead.
froze a bit there. I was just saying, yeah, imagine the willpower it takes to control that sex energy, and when you're able to do that, and you like can retain for, you know, uh 30, 60, or 90 days, when before you couldn't for like a week. Imagine how that would change you. You can control this thing, which is like the hardest thing to control. Imagine then what you could do. Like for me, I've noticed suddenly I'm more disciplined in my work. I was always, trying to do this rap stuff and spiritual rap, but recently, since learning this stuff with you, suddenly I'm more able to organize stuff and be more disciplined. Things that before were like, oh, I can't do it, this is not my nature, or this is too hard for me, or whatever. Now suddenly, my mind can be more under control, and yeah, not only do I have the confidence, because like, wow, if I can control that, what can I do? But also my mind is becoming trained, yeah, to be more masculine, to be more disciplined. And yeah, it can really transform you.
Yeah, and it totally transforms your ability to get things done. Hence, powerhouse man. Power means the ability to do. That's the definition of power.
Mm,
And house, the body is the house. We live in the house.
mm,
So by keeping our
oh,
power, our sexual power within ourselves, we become a powerhouse man. We become men that have the ability to do. And once you have the ability to do, you naturally are looked upon as a leader, because
mm,
depending what you're doing, people will then want to follow or learn or be around you so that they can do it themselves, and they can get that Shakti,
mm,
that power from you, and you can transfer it to others. You can give it to others. Hence, we give our energy through the form of, whether it's through the form of music or labor or a hug or a writing or a book. We give our knowledge, our energy to others through work, through businesses, through
yeah.
different forms that we use. So what happens is, as you practice semen for longer periods of time and your willpower increases, you start to see all this benefit in your life in all aspects. So it becomes a very foundational practice where you recognize that you just simply are more powerful in the world. You have more
Mm,
ability to do. All of a sudden, those projects at home start getting done. All right. Because you have
mm, mm,
energy and you have drive and you're not wasting
yeah.
it. All of a sudden, you have more ideas in your head, because creative, and when we are, any guy knows, think about how creative we can become to get laid, right? Like,
Yeah.
back in the day, before Pornhub and webcam girls and the easy route, you had to become like, you had to plan date night, and you had to, like, right, there was like all kinds of planning going down, and there was tremendous amounts of intelligence taken to get laid. And that's an inherent intelligence. It's not intellect. Like, I'm not talking about like, oh, I read a book and I memorized some pickup lines. That's like the
Yeah.
pickup artist thing. That's not
Yeah.
needed when you're practicing this, because actually nature has equipped you to get laid. Nature has equipped everyone to have some sort of sex life, because your DNA is wanting to move forward, propagate, like have children. So because of that, like think about like every species on the planet has some kind of mating ritual or attraction, like these birds that do these cool dances, or the peacock
Yeah.
will, spread its wings to attract the woman, right? Like, so you have inherently in you attraction factors. Every single person does. So when a guy tells me, oh, women don't find me attractive, I'm like, nope, 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 nope. It's just that you have not developed those qualities in you that are attractive, but they are in you. So we just have to
Mm-hmm.
discover what they are and then enhance them. And semen retention will naturally do that, because semen retention is is tricking your body to thinking you're not getting laid. So what your body does to help you get laid is it enhances you. It enhances those attractive qualities. So all of a sudden, maybe you start not caring as much, because you feel like, because inherently your body knows when when you're unattached, you're more attractive. You're like, yeah, that doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
it used to bother me, but it doesn't bother me anymore. Yeah, because your body, by inherent nature's intelligence, knows that by you staying more renounced, by you staying more unattached to things, you're more in a control power position, which is more attractive. So all these qualities and psychological shifts begin to happen for the positive, for the better. It develops you as a man. It makes you, it enhances who you are. Now, then on a spiritual level, so we talked about it on a biology or physical level, then on a more subtle level, the mind and your psychology. Now, on a spiritual level or energy level, what ends up happening is semen gets refined. So into like what's known as, whether a spiritual body or light body. It was so funny. Last night, we watched this movie called The Whale
Mm-hmm.
by
Haven't.
the Brendan Fraser is the actor.
Okay.
And it's quite a sad movie. It's like, it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
It like 3 or 4 actors the whole movie, I think. It's very good. It's quite sad, but it's quite realistic. It's about a man who is very, very obese. He is killing
Mm-hmm.
himself by eating. He has lost his daughter and his family and all kinds of challenges and issues. And it's
Mm-hmm.
about him reconnecting with his daughter and kind of like, having this last kind of shot at life before he passes, to reconnect with his daughter and their relationship. And I'm like, why? I'm talking about the movie. How did I loop to the movie? I'm now thinking about the movie. Why was I mentioning this movie? There was a point. What were
I
we
don't know either.
talking about before?
Well, we were talking about how the semen refines.
Spiritual level.
Um. Mm,
I think
yeah.
it's coming back to me. We were talking about the spiritual level of semen retention. So, anyways, I don't know why I used the movie as the example, but there was a point. But here's what happens. Your body, that was my plug for The Whale. I just was like, oh, by the way,
Yeah.
they sent me a few bucks to talk about it. I'm just joking. So what happens is your body ends up refining this semen into the, so once you have these psychological shifts, then you end up having like a conscious shift, because your central activity is no longer ejaculation.
Mm,
It's not even like, if you want to take the central point of activity is sex, like what we started with, you could even say the central activity to make it more granular or more even finer
mm.
detailed is actually ejaculation.
Yeah, for most men, it's not even about having sex with anyone, or even if it is, it's almost like using them just to get the ejaculation. So It's
to get
actually
the
just about that.
ejaculation. Yeah.
A quick pleasure,
It's about the
2 seconds
ejaculation.
of pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because it's about the ejaculation, it is about then that becomes the point of all other activities to achieve ejaculation, because the body considers that success. But your mind has a different idea of success. Maybe your mind has maybe success for your mind is becoming famous or becoming rich or well known or climbing the corporate ladder or having a couple kids and being a family man. Like the ego has a lot of definitions of success. The body has one definition of success: ejaculation, eating, sleeping, staying alive. Like the body is like, that's why most people don't do anything above survival, because their consciousness is being dictated by their body. So as soon as they do everything they need to survive, they made just enough money, they have just enough comforts, they have, all the survival basics, they have food in their fridge. Generally, you won't see much more activity from them other than entertainment. Now they just entertainment. So most people's life is based upon how much can I be entertained once my basics are taken care of. So to go above that, some of us live in our minds, so we're more egocentric, where we're like, no, I got to be famous and I got to be rich and I got to. So we've defined success as more in the mental sphere. Now, spiritually, success is love. Can I attain love or service? Now, this is all going to link to masculine leadership, right? So what happens with semen retention is that after you go 30, 60 days, or you develop a consistent regulative habit, so you're constantly retaining, you spend most days, 95% of your days, you never ejaculate. Then what ends up happening is your body starts to develop what's called ojas. And ojas is a Sanskrit word to mean aura or energy. So think of water steaming, and you turn it up and refine it into a gas, invisible gas or energy called steam. The same thing happens with our semen, because your body is now living in abundance. It has an excess of sexual energy. It has more than it needs. So first of all, guys have figured out that subtly women can pick that up, because they can. Because we give off a certain scent or smell that plays to the subconscious mind of like, that's a potent guy. It also shows up in your charisma. Your eyes are brighter. You're more focused, because think of like, I got to get some. And you're just like focused. And you're like, I got to get it. Right. You're like, nothing else matters. You can't think of anything else. Right. Right. Like once that's on the brain, it's very hard to think of other things. But because you're starting to let the need to ejaculate go, your brain is also freed up, or your imagination, to take that same drive, that same intelligence, that same creativity, and put it into higher aspects. And so eventually what happens is semen gets refined into ojas, and this ojas starts to begin to surround each cell as an aura or light. So your vibration is actually increasing, and over time, your body is shifting. It's purifying from a body that needs sex, so therefore it has to be very physical, to a body that doesn't need sex, so therefore it becomes more mentally and spiritually inclined. Eventually, it's just the soul is what ends up penetrating the most, which the soul, sex, is a material version of the soul's desire for unity of love. When you're in love, I'm not talking about like I'm in love, romantic love. I'm talking about selfless love, a type of love that mainly a mother might experience to a child, probably be the closest thing of actual real love in the material world, right? In the material sense, it's so selfless that you are now in yoga or union or enlightened with everything and everyone and everything is you and you are everything, but you're not everything, but you are all at the same time. And it's all confusing because you're both one and separate at the same time, because you're like, but I am all of it, but I'm not. because I'm servant of all of it, because that's the natural conclusion. Well, if I'm it, but I'm not it, so what do I do with myself? I must love it all, and that's how I actually connect with it all. So now I'm in yoga or in union, or I'm, a realized soul. And so that's the natural process of transmutation. It starts off as for sex into enhancing my masculinity and ability to get sex, into, well, I need to get status because actually to attract in this world, you need money and status and, and all this other stuff. So all of a sudden you start to become more effective in this world. You become more organized. You start to develop all these masculine qualities. And then eventually, if you put a spiritual consciousness or practice behind it, then that becomes your central focus point, transmutes or changes into a more spiritual endeavor, which is love.
It becomes aligned with it. Because let's be honest, if you're not, and something you said earlier, which is also in psychology, is you address it, you bring it into your awareness and you address it. So bringing this sexual issue into your awareness and addressing it and then aligning it, it enhances everything. Whereas if you're trying to be all spiritual, but you've got all this sex stuff going on and you're ignoring it, then it's actually a distraction. It's getting in the way. So, but
that's why you deal with it. So we get in trouble generally by two different types of groups of people. The political groups that are pushing this very liberated sex narrative, which is you're free, have as much sex you want, masturbate as much as you want. In fact, it's healthy for you. We should all be reading, everybody masturbate, everybody watch porn, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. So there's that narrative, which is the mainstream kind of narrative that's being pushed. And then the generally the rhetoric to that is, I was interviewed on a podcast yesterday. It was really good. She did a bunch of research about me. It's called the Mars and Venus podcast or something. It's about men and women coming together. And she said the articles that were written about you aren't very favorable to you. They call you misogynistic. They call you all these names, and can you address that? And I said, yes, that's a political tactic, because it's political entities, or it's men who are aspiring for high levels of power, who are pushing masturbation and pornography onto society. This is a very military tactic that's been used. I've talked about it in other podcasts and videos. So we get from meaning, their way of trying to cause trouble is to discredit it. NoFap is unscientific. NoFap is an alt-right movement. NoFap is a bunch of incels, guys who can't get laid, type of thing, right? NoFap is all this.
There's certain words nowadays that they can use to cancel anything, basically, to go with the modern narrative. So misogynistic is one. So if you get enough people saying this guy's misogynistic, they know it will discredit, because the modern woke narrative is against misogyny. So they'll choose one and just keep saying it, even if it's not true, and it just becomes discredited, even though no one's actually looked into it. So it's just what's it called? Not a flash word, but there's many just words nowadays that they use, and then it immediately puts people off.
That's right. Misogynistic is one. And so, anti-feminist, right? He doesn't. And so, and what that equates to most people in most people's heads is he hates women or thinks women are less than men. And obviously none of that is true, but that's the narrative. Then the other place we get in trouble, we started off by talking about being Hare Krishnas, or so whether Christian or Krishnas and I work with all guys of all different, we have all different faiths within our training grounds and with what we're doing. But we do get in trouble sometimes with religious communities, because then they see it also at a high level and they go, he's promoting sex. And we need to be getting away from that to becoming more spiritual. So he's pushing people towards sex. And so,
but then how many people from those communities come to us and say, we really needed someone to talk about it because we're also repressed.
because the narrative is so it's there's two narratives, and we're bringing a third narrative, which is in the middle. It's like a middle path, like a middle ground. Like, hold on. Yes, there are spiritual benefits to giving up sex, and is the path of a monk, but we also know that 99.9 will not take that path. That's just not of interest. They don't care. Like they're just not there. And this training, sexual alchemy, is not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's not it doesn't belong to the Hare Krishna or Christian community. Or sexual alchemy is a technology that's used to transmute sexual energy. It's practice, muscle control, and also psychological principles, right? It's taught in university. So it's like it's like don't mistake it, because spiritual cultures talked about it. Don't mistake it for being a belief system. It's not a belief system. Whether you're atheist or you're theist, you're horny, you want sex, you have semen. Like it's like very like just factual. Like this is what happens. Okay. And there's tons of science and papers, modern and ancient, to back it up. The best science, though, is to experiment yourself and do it. And then you'll know for sure, because you'll have the practical experience, because some of it is very subtle. And so sometimes it's like, it's hard to grasp the idea. You might believe it, but you haven't lived it because you haven't practiced it. And that means you have to have a certain amount of faith. And faith is an emotion, not also linked to a religion. Like faith often gets put up as a faith, but faith and fear are the same thing. Faith is just the emotion or feeling that things will work out as you wish, or as in a positive way for you. Fear,
a lot of people
is that go ahead.
A lot of people have faith there's no God. A lot of people have faith in science. It's the same as having faith is,
it's a belief. It's
faith.
You put your faith somewhere. We all have faith. The faith is not something that's made up by religions. Everyone has what we call the emotion of faith. Where you put it, some people put it to God, some people put it to science, some people put it to their mother. Whatever my mother says is as kids, is generally in our parents. They're God. Whatever they say is the absolute. And so we have to think of like this very, very practically. So we tend to get in trouble or backlash from political parties, more so from them. Religious communities are very much opening and welcoming us in, especially as more education and more understanding is being known about these practices and how it can be used to help men develop. And this whole process develops you as a masculine leader, because from a consciousness perspective, the masculine means conscious and the feminine means unconscious, or masculine can also mean positive and feminine means negative, or masculine can mean order and feminine means chaos. So like, it's funny how you said you get yourself, that's one of the first things I noticed all of a sudden, because I'm more masculine. I'm just more organized, and I want things to be organized. Like if it's not organized, I like it. And I'm like, that's my masculine psychology showing me, telling me to, get that organized, get your finances organized, get your routines organized, get your rituals and habits organized, get yourself organized, and start eliminating things that aren't organized. Start getting rid of the stuff that's throwing you off, that's not part of your path. So you get to see what am I involved with and what am I doing that's just like fluff work, egoistic work. My ego got me involved somehow, and now I'm intertangled with this thing, and I'm like, shit, I just got to get myself out of this thing, right? You know what I mean? So it brings tremendous amounts of clarity, and you physically start to shift, because as you develop more ojas, you're more energy, and now you're full of energy because you are energy, and that's your actual truth or spirit. And then your center activity is no longer sex. So your center activity becomes service, because the want to penetrate for a man is there. If he's physically inclined, he wants to penetrate with his dick. If he is egotistically inclined, he wants to penetrate with his ideas and such. And if he's spiritually inclined, he wants to be penetrated by God, or he wants to penetrate the universe and know the deepest truths. He wants to serve. If you're like me, you're like floating in between all three. right?
Yeah.
Like there's some times where you better believe it's my dick I want to penetrate with, right? But I direct that with my wife, so I'm not a monk, right? I wouldn't be a monk in my life to pull, and I've openly admitted, like I'm ready to give that desire up, but I'm okay not ejaculating. I've learned to do that, which is funny because the less I do that, the less I've actually controlled my sex. I still like to have sex, but I am not as I'm not going to say I'm free from it, but I'm not nearly as controlled as sex as I used to be. Like
Yeah.
it's just because I'm like in a way, like I have sex to, yes, for pleasure for sure, but again, 9 out of 10 times I'm not ejaculating during sex, so there's no ending
Yeah.
to it to me other than when my
Yeah.
wife
So,
is
well,
satisfied, right?
certainly not. You don't become as attracted to it in a lusty way, like this porno way, where it's like all about
Mhm.
lust and about the ejaculation. If you're practicing this, then you might still want to do it as a practice with your partner, like to love and connect, or yeah, as a place to put that desire in a more conscious place. But after doing a lot of this work, it's like you just don't really feel like, that lusty kind of just raw, like physical, just sex
Yeah.
for the cheap pleasure. It's just kind of, you get a higher taste from that. You lose taste for it.
Yeah, your center point of activity is starting to change. Now you're more goal
But
oriented. Like in the
and that's
Powerhouse
what's
Man training, pillar
distracting.
1 is
Yeah.
yeah, is what's
Yeah.
distracting you is your lower desire for sex is distracting you from going
Yeah.
after your goals and dreams, pleasure instead of purpose. So when you
Yeah.
shift from a pleasure seeking being to a purpose seeking man, so if you're a pleasure seeking man, you're essentially you will be a slave to the political religious type systems, not that's not even a bad thing. In fact, it's probably a good thing for you, because if not, you would just be like, if it was
Mm.
truly like the nature's like way, we would just kill you because you would be weak. All right. And I mean, if
Yeah.
you really want to get to the brutal aspect of nature, because that's what animals do, right? Like that's what tribes like. If this was 10,000 years ago and you were weak because you were jerking off, you are now a liability to the tribe. If we
Just
if
imagining some caveman just jerking up,
Yeah.
like just masturbating in the forest in a cave by himself, like looking at some hieroglyphics, or just just imagining some, like, what a loser, like he would not
Yeah.
survive.
Yeah, your tribe, like back then, the consciousness might have been just kill that dude because he's just not contributing, right? So now we don't kill you, but we might put you on welfare or social assistance, or we might like these things. And these things aren't bad. Not everybody, but I'm saying that sometimes you need these things or whatever. But if you're living a life where and you can just be honest with yourself, if you're like, yes, I'm more pleasure centered than I am purpose centered, that's why you're feeling unfulfilled, because you can never satisfy the senses. You can have as much sex as you want, you'll still not feel satisfied. It's you can't satisfy them. They'll just want more and more and more. So therefore, you have to direct that urge, things that can be satisfied. What can be satisfied? The soul. The soul can be satisfied through loving expression and service. So how you develop as a man is you develop yourself, you develop your sexual nature from a little boy who's just chasing ass all day and jerking off and watching porn, completely controlled by his sexual energy, to a higher purpose, which generally isn't going to be very spiritual at first. And that's
Mm.
like I facilitate that, but it's higher. It's like, hey, why don't you go build a massive business? Why don't you go become a massive artist? Why don't you do and direct that energy to something that's actually of a higher nature and is going to give you
Mm.
tremendous benefit in this world, and it's going to naturally start to push you towards a more spiritual consciousness, because once you're playing in the subtle world of the mind and you're learning to create through your mind and through ideas and acting on those ideas, you're going to some point recognize I'm also not those ideas. I can be aware of those ideas and I can change those ideas. So that's not the eternal part of who I am either. It
Yeah.
must be something else that's underneath there. And then you can get into even higher and higher spiritual type of concepts.
Yeah.
So there was like a much more deeper probably conversation that most people are having when it comes to masculine leadership, because the way that I'm teaching it and the way that we're facilitating it inside of our school is we're facilitating that training by equipping to go after their material goals unapologetically and continuously develop themselves to the point where they recognize, like I recognize in myself that if I go after my egotistic goals, right? Rich and famous and stuff, there is some pleasure there, but ultimately I'm still, even when I achieve those type of things, like I've made good money. I remember at one point in my life, I'm like, man, if I could make $5,000 a month, that would be amazing. Right? If I made $5,000 this month, I have to have like conversations with people about not paying them. Right? So fortunately, I haven't had to do that because I will hold to my word. Make that, but so this is how things change. So there was one point in my life where making $5,000 would have been like just like amazing. Now if I don't generate a minimum of my minimum number to keep just things running as they are, not even growing, but keep things running, is 6,000 a month. So that's a big context shift. So now I have to get 20 and 30 and $1,000 months to take things to the next level. So those are very material goals. Like you're talking about making more money, but here's the secret to that. Here's some things that's not talked about. Who you have to become to develop into 20 and 30,000 and then 50,000, 100,000 and multiple seven figures. You have to like totally mature up. Like I'm now responsible for other people getting paid. People are expecting money. Clients are expecting a certain level of support and training. So as you develop and you develop in these goals and you go after your big goals and your big vision, there is a personal development journey that comes along with that, because you'll just soon recognize that the thing that's stopping you from accomplishing your goals and dreams is you. You will realize it. You'll be like, I just simply don't have the habits or discipline. It's not that I'm not talented or that I don't have the intelligence or I don't have some give. Every single one of us has the inherent ability to become super abundant in our life. The question is, are you developing it? Most men stop developing themselves consciously by the age of 25. They stop reading books. They stop learning things. They stop taking courses. Now they're having sex and raising their kids and paying bills. And now they're just trying to maintain their life and try to soak some little pleasures out of it on the week or whatever. So this whole process is a deep transformation, and how it's all linked together is like the trainings is that the first thing when you join the school, you get introduced to the sexual alchemy techniques, which can take you 6 weeks to learn, and then about a year of implementing it to make it a habit and to actually be able to do it without, let's say, it's like riding a bike, like where you just do it subconsciously.
Yeah.
And then you work with me inside the Powerhouse Man, either in a group setting or one-on-one, where we take that energy and you develop your vision and your mission, your purpose. You develop your skills, your overall core habits. So what's a core habit? Eating is a core habit. Sleeping is a core habit. The way you talk to yourself are core habits. So we look at your core habits that are going to develop you into a powerhouse. So you perform well at all aspects of life. You just holistically perform well. You show up with energy and on fire and ready to rock. And then we specialize in two areas: relationship redesigns and business. And most of the guys working with us right now or working with me are working on their businesses and their online business, whether they're coaching business or they're artists or they're selling, we've got a guy selling precious metals. I've got some real estate agents and financials. So they're guys working on their businesses. or guys working on their marriages or relationships and designing them in specific ways. Because you have to transmute your energy, you have to put it into something. You have to direct it somewhere. And so that's how all the programs are linked together. The full training group to come develop a man both in and outside the bedroom.
Wow. It really does all fit together, and I'm learning how to do it stage by stage, and I can really feel the process. Like Nakula said, the best science is to do the experiment yourself. The theory is that this works, what he explained, that's the theory. The experiment is you do it yourself and you get a result. That's what science is. So if you want to take this more seriously, then I suggest, yeah, you try it out and get the benefits we're talking about, as everyone in our program is doing.
Yeah, we're sexual scientists.
Yeah.
Which also makes
hey
us
girl,
spiritual scientists.
I'm a sexual scientist, girl. You wanted me to experiment on you?
Dude, I see if that works. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We're gonna go down the streets. When I come to London, I'm gonna go down the streets of London using that pickup line, and we'll see how far it gets us.
Yeah, man. Let's try.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the questions, man. I think yeah, it's cool. And I was there any comments? I saw some comments coming in, and then maybe we should wrap up. I think we're pretty much at an hour right now.
Yeah, there's someone with some comments. He said a few he thought part was funny and important, and then he was talking about let your soul be free. Ego is the opposite energy, the soul. And he's saying sad but true money is just illusion of true freedom. And he said bye. So thanks for the comments. Can tell you were listening, and yeah, and in agreement with what we were saying. Thanks for your support and encouragement. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys tuning in. Remember, we go live same week every time with these discussions. And so you can plug in, jump into the conversation, ask questions. Also, like leave comments if you have particular topics you want us to touch upon or talk about.
Yeah.
Let us know. And yeah, keep plugging in every single week so that you can stay. It's just good to be in association, meaning it's good to plug into these conversations because they play in our consciousness and our thought processes throughout the week. So just by plugging in each week and staying tuned into this channel, if you just did that alone, I've had messages of guys sending me saying, hey man, just by following your content and plugging into the videos and plugging into what you're doing, they've got tremendous benefit. And of course, the guys that are getting the most, the guys who are making massive transformations, 10 timesing their impact, their income, their influence, they're all working with us inside of our school. So reach out, connect. The links are in the description. Reach out and connect, and we could jump on a call to see if the training is a right fit for you, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Peace out. See you next week.
Later.